The rain had been falling for 3 hours straight, and the Colorado hills offered no shelter, no mercy, and no forgiveness. The night was the kind of dark that swallowed men whole, the kind that made even the bravest rider question whether the road ahead was real or just another trick of a tired mind. Butch Cassidy pulled his coat tighter against the storm. His horse, Sundance, the animal, not the man, had begun to limp somewhere back near the ridge. Behind him, he knew, were men with badges and rifles and a $3,000 reason to find him. Ahead of him was nothing but black sky and wet mud. Then he saw it, a faint amber glow breaking through the darkness like a small promise. A window. A ranch. A light that someone had left burning in the middle of a night that had no business being survived. He rode toward it, telling himself he only needed water, maybe a dry place to rest his horse. 5 minutes. Nothing more. He had no idea that what the girl inside that house would hand him, it wasn't water. But before we continue, where are you watching us from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. We love hearing from our family all around the world. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button right now, because this story is one you do not want to walk away from halfway through. To understand this story, you need to understand the world Butch Cassidy lived in. The year was 1897. The American West was caught between two ages, the age of the open frontier and the age of the law closing in. Railroad companies had spread their iron arms across the land. Sheriffs had telegraph wires now. Bounty hunters had photographs. The world was shrinking. And for outlaws like Butch, every sunrise felt like borrowed time. His real name was Robert Leroy Parker. Born in Beaver, Utah, in 1866, to a poor farming family. He was the oldest of 13 children, and he had grown up watching his father break his back over land that never gave enough in return. As a boy, he had been kind, gentle even. He loved horses. He loved his mother's cooking. He loved the way the Utah mountains looked in the early morning when the light was just beginning to touch the snow. But somewhere between that boy and this man, something had broken. He had ridden with the wrong crowd at 17, made choices that couldn't be unmade. And by the time the world knew him as Butch Cassidy, leader of the Wild Bunch, the most wanted outlaw gang in the American West, the boy from Utah was buried so deep inside that even Butch himself had stopped looking for him. On this particular night in October 1897, he had separated from his gang after a job gone wrong near Telluride. He had been riding alone for 2 days, hungry, soaked, and more tired than a man could explain with words. The Morrison Ranch sat at the edge of a narrow valley, sheltered on 3 sides by old pine trees that had weathered decades of Colorado winters. It was small, a modest farmhouse, a wooden barn that leaned slightly to the left, a stone well, and a garden that someone had cared for with great tenderness, even in October. Even now, with the rain turning the soil to mud, you could see that someone here loved this place. Butch dismounted slowly, one hand on his horse's neck to steady them both. He knocked on the door with 3 careful knocks, not aggressive, not desperate. The knock of a man trying to appear harmless. The door opened. She was young, 24, perhaps 25, with dark brown hair pinned back loosely and flour still dusted on her left hand. Her eyes were a steady, clear gray. Not frightened. Not welcoming, either. Just measuring. She looked at him the way a person looks at weather, not afraid of it, just deciding how to deal with it. "Evening," she said. "Evening, ma'am," Butch said. "Sorry to disturb you at this hour. My horse is hurting, and I've been riding in this rain since afternoon. I was hoping for a bit of water and maybe a dry place to rest the animal. I'll be gone before sunrise." She looked past him at the horse, then back at him. A long, quiet look. "The barn's open," she said. "Tend to your horse first. Then come inside. I have soup on." She didn't wait for his answer. She simply turned and walked back into the warm light of the kitchen, leaving the door open behind her. Her name was Margaret Morrison. Her father, Harold, had been a cattle farmer for 30 years, but a bad winter 3 years back had taken most of the herd. Her mother had passed from fever the following spring. It was just the two of them now, her and her father, and Harold's health had been failing since summer. She ran the ranch mostly alone. She told Butch none of this right away. It came out slowly, the way truth does when it's been kept in for too long. Over the wooden table, with a bowl of bean soup between them and a fire crackling in the corner, the conversation moved at its own pace. She asked him where he was headed. He said west. She asked where he'd come from. He said it had been a long road. "You have the look of a man who's been running," she said simply, breaking a piece of bread. Butch said nothing for a moment. "Everybody's running from something," he finally answered. Margaret nodded slowly. "My father always said, 'No man is as bad as the world decides he is. The world makes up its mind fast. People are slower, harder to figure out.'" Butch looked at her across the table. In all his years, the robberies, the hideouts, the campfire arguments, and courthouse escapes, he could not remember the last time someone had spoken to him like that. Not with pity, not with judgment, just as one human being to another. It was Margaret who rose first from the table. She went to the small wooden dresser near the fireplace and opened the bottom drawer. From inside, she lifted a flat tin box, the kind families use to keep important papers safe from fire and flood. She set it on the table between them and lifted the lid. Inside were a few folded documents, a pressed flower, and a sealed envelope, yellowed slightly at the corners. Never opened. She picked up the envelope and held it in the candlelight. On the front, in careful handwriting, were 3 words. The blood drained from Butch Cassidy's face. Nobody called him that. Nobody alive knew that name easily. Not here, not in Colorado, not written on an envelope inside a tin box in a farmhouse he had stumbled into by accident in the rain. His hands, which had held guns without trembling, which had cracked open 100 safes without shaking, those hands went still. "Where did you get this?" he asked. His voice was barely above a whisper. "An old man came through here about 3 years ago," Margaret said quietly. "He stayed 2 nights. He was ill, we could see that, but he was kind. Helped my father with the fence even though he could barely walk straight. The morning he left, he put this on the table and said, 'If a man named Robert Parker ever comes through this valley, tall blue eyes, laughs easy, please give him this. He'll come. I believe he will.'" Butch took the envelope with both hands. He held it for a long time without opening it. Margaret said nothing. She simply sat across from him, her hands folded, the fire casting long shadows across the walls. When he finally broke the seal, the paper inside was thin, the kind his family had always used because it was cheaper. The handwriting was his father's. He recognized it instantly. Maxon Parker's hand. Large, careful, the letters formed slowly by a man who had learned to write later in life. "My dear Robert, I know where you are and what you have become. I am not writing this out of shame, though I understand if you expect that from me. I am writing this because I am afraid, not of what you have done, but of what might be done to you. Every day I wake up and wonder if this is the day I read your name in a newspaper in a way that cannot be undone. When you left home at 17, I said things I cannot take back. I told you that a man makes his own fate, and that if you chose the wrong road, I would not follow you down it. I was wrong to say it the way I did. I was wrong to let you leave without saying what I should have said instead, that you were my son, and that nothing you could do would ever change what you are to me. Your mother asks about you. She prays for you every single night. She keeps your old chair at the table. Robert, I do not ask you to explain yourself to me. I do not ask you to answer for things I don't fully understand. I am asking only one thing. Come home. Come home before it is too late, for both of us. I leave the door open every night. I will leave it open until the day I cannot. Your father, Maxon. Butch sat without moving for a very long time. Then Margaret, very quietly, said, "He passed away, the old man. About 2 years after he came through here. My father told me later, when he heard in town." Butch Cassidy had not cried since he was 11 years old. He had made a decision, somewhere in those early years of roughing it, that tears were a door that needed to stay shut. A man in his position could not afford the vulnerability. Crying meant you could be broken, and a broken man in the American West didn't last long. But that door opened now, quietly, without drama. His shoulders came forward first, then a long, slow exhale, the kind that carries years in it. "I didn't make it," he said. His voice was rough, cracked at the edges. "I didn't get there in time." Margaret didn't offer empty comfort. She didn't say it was all right, because it wasn't. And she was a woman who understood that some truths deserve to be sat with, rather than papered over. She simply placed her hand on the table, close to his. "You got here," she said at last. "Tonight. That letter waited 3 years for you. And you came. Maybe that's not nothing. By the time the sky began to lighten, a pale, clean gray after the rain, Butch had already been up for an hour. He did not wake Margaret. He went to the barn first, tended to his horse, and then found himself walking slowly around the property. He saw the fence posts that had rotted on the north side. He saw the barn door that needed a new hinge. He saw the woodpile that was low for winter. Without thinking about it, without deciding, without planning, he picked up the axe leaning against the wall and began to split logs. Then he found a spare hinge in the barn and fixed the door. Then he reset 2 fence posts in the soft morning mud. When Harold Morrison appeared on the porch, old, moving slowly, a blanket around his shoulders, he watched the stranger working for a long moment before speaking. "Maxon said you'd come," the old man said simply. Butch stopped, set down the axe, looked at the old man. "He talked about me?" "Every morning he was here," Harold said. "Said you had the best laugh of any boy he'd ever known. Said you could charm a stone into moving." The old man paused. "He was proud of you, son. Whatever else, he was proud." When Butch left an hour later, he set a small canvas pouch on the kitchen table. He didn't count what was inside. It was enough. Enough for the winter, and maybe the spring. He folded the letter carefully and put it inside his coat against his chest, where a man keeps things he cannot afford to lose. He did not say goodbye. He simply rode, the morning light turning the Colorado hills from gray to gold around him. History tells us that Butch Cassidy continued his outlaw life for several more years after 1897. He robbed trains and banks across the West with the Wild Bunch, always staying one step ahead of the Pinkerton agents who hunted him. In 1901, he and the Sundance Kid fled to South America, where they tried, briefly, to go straight. They worked as honest ranchers in Argentina for a time. Some said they were the best neighbors a man could ask for. The official account says he died in Bolivia in 1908 in a shootout with soldiers. But there are those who believe he came back, that he lived quietly under another name, somewhere in the American West, until old age finally took him peacefully. No one knows for certain. Some stories don't want to be finished. What we do know is this. Whatever roads he rode after that October night in Colorado, he carried something with him that he hadn't carried before. A piece of paper. A father's handwriting. 3 words that no bounty poster, no wanted notice, no newspaper headline had ever used for him. My dear Robert. People say Butch Cassidy was an outlaw. And he was. But on that rainy night in Colorado in 1897, in a small ranch kitchen with a bowl of soup and a stranger's kindness, he was just a son who had been forgiven by a man who could no longer hear the reply. And perhaps, in the end, that is the most human story of all. If this story moved you, if it made you think of someone you love or someone you haven't spoken to in too long, then please share it. That is how these stories survive. Not in textbooks, not in museums, but in the hearts of people who pass them on. And before you go, we have a question for you in the comments today. Do you believe Butch Cassidy's life could have been different? Was there a moment, one choice, one road not taken, that might have changed everything? Tell us what you think. We read every single comment. Next time, we ride into another forgotten corner of the American West, another story that history almost lost, and another soul that deserved more than a footnote. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Until then, ride easy, partner.